Hello, everyone. I think we shall kick off the Christmas webinar now. My name is Kirsten Zoe Smith, and I am the Net Zero Strategist at Recorra, and this is Tara Valeni.
And I'm a sustainability consultant.
And we are going to be talking to you today about how to have a sustainable Christmas. The title of our webinar is Sleigh Bells and Supply Chains, Unwrapping the Carbon Footprint of Christmas. And we really hope that you all enjoy it. And let's kick off now. So Christmas is, as some say, the most wonderful time of the year. I personally love Christmas. Lots of great celebrations with my family. And it's really important that we, enjoy great food and decorate and give gifts and celebrate with our families and friends as part of this festive season. However, there are significant environmental impacts associated with these holiday celebrations. So we want to help people to reduce the impact of their celebrations so you can celebrate and enjoy yourself sustainably. First of all, the framework that we're going to be using today to think about the environmental impact of Christmas is the idea of consumption. And consumption is a term for the amount of goods and services that person uses up in a particular period of time. And at Christmas, everyone's consumption goes up. And it goes up because we purchase more things in order to have this celebration. We purchase clothing, gift wrapping, decorations, feasts, presents, mince pies, you name it. We purchase lots and lots of items at Christmas, specifically for Christmas. And it's this increase that causes the environmental damage from the resources used to produce them, from the manufacturing systems used to make them. And it is the waste of the items themselves that has that back end issue too. So the question is, how do we reduce the environmental impact of that consumption while still being able to have the celebration? And one of the areas that we at Recorra as a waste management company like to focus on is the waste. Because the waste that you produce really is excess consumption that you didn't need to have. So if we just run through the numbers to start with, typical UK Christmas waste, you're looking at 13,000 tons of glass, 175 tons of aluminium minced pie wrappers, 12,000 tons of waste Christmas trees, and 30,000 tons of waste Christmas cards. And if you break that down on the individual household level, we're looking at about average of 3 black bags of Christmas packaging produced every Christmas, £250 average spend just on food that you then waste. So not on food that you eat, on food that you do not eat, that goes off and then you put in the bin. £185 on Christmas decorations and 24 waste Christmas cards per household. So that really is an excessive amount of waste. And total Christmas waste in the UK is about 3 million tons. So it's a very busy time of the year for us, right? If we want to look at the environmental impact of just the waste itself, and here we're looking at imagining all of these items are disposed of in general waste, and therefore in London they would go to an energy from waste plant where they're incinerated. We are looking at about 0.3 of a kilo of CO2 for one Christmas jumper, a quarter kilo of CO2 for one string of lights, 8 kilos of CO2 for an artificial Christmas tree, 0.15 for 3 strings of tinsel, and 0.25 for throwing away one plastic train set. So that's about 9 kilograms of CO2, which is a 30-mile car journey fueled with petrol. It's a lot of emissions just from burning things that you've purchased once and then do not use again. And, often when we talk about environmental impact and waste, we're thinking about disposal. We're thinking about, I have a bag of waste in my hand, and what is the environmental impact of whatever I do with it now? However, often what that approach misses is the fact that most of the environmental impact of the things that you buy and that you consume are actually in the material making side. It's actually in everything that happened up until the point that you purchased it. And that this is often much, much larger. And it influences the environmental impact of all of these items that you might purchase and all of these activities you might engage in. And what we're going to do in the next couple of slides is go through how to think about the different stages of the supply chain that went into making the product that you purchased. And we're looking at extraction and farming, manufacturing, shipping, and retail as sort of some of the highest impact areas. So one sort of snapshot of the supply chain of Christmas is to look at where all of the Christmas decorations come from. And there's a decent amount of coverage of this one city in China called Yiwu, which produces 2/3 of the world's Christmas decorations. It's effectively a massive trade fair all year round that sells bulk quantities of low quality decorations to the international market for various celebrations. All of the items that are sold here are brittle, they're often plastic items, and they're assembled by hand. That's a really important thing. When you're purchasing low quality goods from a store, I think there's a tendency here in the UK to believe that because they're so standardized, because they look so identical to one another, they come from some kind of factory robotic process. It's a bunch of robots making this stuff. It's really not true. So much of this manufacturing happens in sort of sweatshop conditions through manual labor. You know, someone who's working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, sewing the white trim on red Santa hats. That's how those get sewed on. And the reason that the goods that you purchase are so cheap, these sort of generic goods that you might buy in a pound shop or at a large retail store, is because of the differential cost of labor between the UK and China. In China, they are able to pay their workers much, much less. They also have very few health and safety regulations and very few environmental regulations. So they don't have all of these additional cost layers that we do in the UK. And you know, this is a point where I'm trying to sort of say that the UK does this well. If you want ethical production, the UK has very rigorous environmental and labor regulations that ensure that the goods made here are done in such a way as with a sort of zero tolerance health and safety policy, so that nobody, you know, and all the health and safety issues are measured and mitigated against. So we, you know, we have, you know, very strong regulatory structure that enforces these conditions, which just do not exist in lots of other places of the world where many of these products come from. And so, you know, if you do not want to sort of contribute to this sort of system, we advise that you avoid purchasing those very cheap goods that you know that you'll throw away, those you know, the stocking fillers that are going to be fun for 3 hours on Christmas morning and then going to go straight in the bin, the decorative items that are going to be on the wall and then in 3 weeks time you're going to tear them off and put them in a black bag. If you purchase Christmas decorations, try to purchase ones that are made to higher standards from regulatory regimes sort of in the UK or the EU. And if you don't do that, try to make sure that you keep it for next year. There's no need to throw away your Christmas decorations every year. You can keep those items and enjoy them next year, and therefore elongate the life cycle of them. And if we just sort of take one item and then we break down all of the supply chain processes that had to happen to make it, we can see that the impact and the extent to which the making of this item influences, you know, huge amounts of the economy and environmental impact just by looking at one polystyrene Christmas star for the top of your tree. You know, the polystyrene has to be extracted from crude oil out of the ground. It then is cracked into different fractions. One of those is naphtha, which is turned into plastic feedstock. So the hydrocarbon, the petrochemical will be turned into these plastic pellets, which are then melted down and molded into whatever shape you want through polystyrene molding. And then they will be by hand dipped into glue, and dipped into paint and sprayed and dipped into glitter by someone who is producing hundreds of these a day. And that is the sort of standard process for lots of these low quality celebratory arts and crafts goods. So, when I was telling Tara about this at the beginning, and Bryony, one of our colleagues, they responded by going, wow, we should just stop making things. This is terrible. We should just stop consuming things, stop producing things. There'll be lots and lots of negative environmental and economic, maybe not environmental, there's lots of negative social and economic impacts of not making anything. Which is why, the sort of sustainability world has focused on this difficult question of how do we ensure people have high quality of life, people have access to affordable goods, but that they're made in a sustainable way. And at Recorra, we also advocate this transition, the sustainable transition to a different making and using system to the one that is currently dominant everywhere around the world. Just before I get on to sort of comparing different production systems, I wanted to dive into the different supply chain stages and their relative impacts on the carbon footprint of an item. Here in this bar chart, you will see a selection of common food items. So we have beef, chocolate, cheese, pork, poultry, eggs, milk, and wine. And what I'm trying to point out here is that where something is made, so the transportation of that item, is often a fraction of the impact compared to what it actually is. So the beef, most of the emissions of beef come from farming. Most of the emissions of chocolate come from the land use change. Land use change is where you have demand for a product in an area where there is a small amount of land to make it, and therefore you have to continuously deforest woodland, deforest natural areas to change them into agricultural land or into urban areas. That's what we mean by land use change. So this piece of land that used to have some forest on it, we then have to cut all the trees down and we have to till the earth so it becomes agricultural land. That process of changing the land is extremely high emission and very damaging. And that is the sort of what people really try to avoid. Even with cheese, it's the farming and it's the animal feed that have a much larger contribution than simply where something is from. So when you're looking at a label, where it's from is most important in telling you the kind of regulatory system in which it was made. So if you see the label that says it's made in China, you have an idea about the kinds of conditions or the kinds of ethics that went into making the product. And you shouldn't think, oh, it's from China, therefore it's a very long way away, and the reason I shouldn't buy it is because it's a very long way away. Shipping, international shipping, because it carries there's such a high volume of goods per boat, is actually very carbon efficient. What you should instead look at is, what am I buying? What am I buying, and what were the conditions in which it was made? Those are the two questions that really make an impact when it comes to your sustainable consumption choices. And if we want to compare production methods, I've put together two comparisons between bad Santa's workshop and good Santa's workshop. So bad Santa's workshop only makes polystyrene toys. I did a little back of the envelope maths, and I saw that of the global toy industry, about 350,000 tons of plastic are used in that. So we're just assuming that Bad Santa is making that fraction of toys. So he's making only polystyrene toys out of virgin plastics. He makes these in a coal-powered factory. It would take about 346,000 tons of coal to power the factories to make that amount of polystyrene toys. He then, on his one night, delivering all of those toys to the children around the world, it would take him 700 million litres of jet fuel to power his magical sleigh, the 40,000 miles that he'd need to go to and from Lapland. And the resulting carbon emissions alone of this process would be 3.5 million tons, which is just a fraction of the toys specifically made for polystyrene. So really significant quantity of emissions. We can compare this to Good Santa's toy factory and elf workshop. Good Santa cares about the environmental impact of his manufacturing process, and so he makes all of his toys out of renewable materials. Particularly, he likes FSC certified sustainable forestry products, and he uses electric machinery for his forestry operations. The benefit of using wood over plastic is that the wood, first of all, stores carbon. So if you keep it for a long time, you actually have some biogenic carbon storage going on. And secondly, purchasing high quality forestry products counterintuitively actually preserves the forest. Remember, previously we were talking about the damage of land use change. One of the ways that you can protect forests from land use change into agriculture or into urban areas is by creating a market for the products of the forest. So you basically ensure that that forest locks up a bunch of capital. And when you make the forest valuable, it's producing valuable products that people buy, there is much lower incentive in market terms to turn it into something else. So purchasing high quality forestry goods is counterintuitively one of the best ways to protect well-managed forests. Secondly, Santa is based in Lapland, Finland, obviously. So there is no need for him to use coal. Bad Santa is using coal maliciously because he has access to 100% zero carbon geothermal energy from how thin the crust is up near the North Pole. So he can power his factory on zero carbon energy all year round. Then, when he's delivering his goods to the children of the world, he powers his magical sleigh with sustainable aviation fuels, which are derived from biofuels. This means that they do not have the same fossil carbon impact on the atmosphere and are instead made from waste oils, which has a much lower carbon impact both on the supply chain and in the tailpipe emission. And the resulting carbon emissions of Santa making the same number of toys through this process would be 372,500 tons of carbon dioxide, which is 89% lower than Bad Santa's production process. So the reason we have put this together is to show you that you can still enjoy the same items, the same products, but if it's made in a completely different way, with completely different energy sources, from completely different materials, it just doesn't have the same environmental impact. And now I shall hand over to Tara to tell you what you can do on the individual level and business and in your home to reduce your impact.
Yeah, so our individual consumption also plays a massive part. And before I get started, I'm just going to answer a couple of people have asked in the chat if we'll be circulating the slides, and this will be uploaded onto YouTube afterwards, so you can watch it if you can't continue right now. But just to get started, so Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and Boxing Day combined make up just under 6% of the UK's total annual carbon emissions, and the average Brit causes 23 times more carbon dioxide on Christmas Day. And the main contributors to this are animal-heavy festive meals, gift giving, which drives overconsumption, travel, energy use, and waste. So I'm going to run through a few tips which can help you reduce your carbon footprint in these aspects. So first of all is food. So each UK Christmas dinner is equivalent to 20 kilograms of carbon dioxide emissions, and 60% of this is related to the life cycle of a turkey. So the total equivalent emissions for UK Christmas dinners is equivalent to 148 million miles travelled in a car. And in the UK, around 2 million turkeys are thrown away at Christmas, along with other large amounts of food waste. And this has really high emissions because animal agriculture rivals big oil with its methane emissions, which is a really potent greenhouse gas. And other than this, mass deforestation also occurs to raise the animals. So the carbon footprint of the turkeys eaten this Christmas will be the equivalent, just in the UK, of 6,000 car trips around the world, or 300 return car journeys to the moon, according to researchers at the University of Manchester. So here are some kind of practical tips to reduce your food waste. So first of all, you can reduce the environmental impact of animal-heavy festive meals by introducing alternatives like plant-based dishes. So raising livestock requires more resources than plant-based foods, which leads to higher greenhouse gas emissions and climate change. And poultry is in the top 10 most wasted foods in the UK, with 100,000 tonnes of it ending up in the bin every year. So a plant-based Christmas dinner can have half the carbon emissions of a turkey dinner, as well as being cheaper than animal-based options. Secondly, is to plan menus and portions to reduce leftovers. So you can only buy the ingredients and the volumes you need for your Christmas meal. And if you do have any excess, you can consider freezing it or sharing with a friend. Thirdly, is to compost your food scraps. So if they can't be repurposed, you can still compost them to prevent them from going to waste. And fourthly, is buying locally, so local markets or allotments. But as Kirsten did mention earlier, where you buy your food is not as important as kind of the ethics behind what you're buying. So just kind of focusing on what you're buying as well as where you're buying it from. And then lastly is to repurpose leftovers. So you can repurpose leftovers in other dishes, or you can also repackage leftovers for friends, family, local homeless shelters. And there's also a range of food waste apps you can try. So for example, Too Good To Go, you can put things, or Olio, if you're not gonna consume them. So this is an example of how you can repurpose your leftovers in a leftover pie. And the additional kind of bonus of this are cost savings. So we spend around £220 more than usual on food. And these figures are also based on the assumption that a third will be wasted, which is actually all year round, we do waste around a third of our food, which is really shocking. So just trying to prevent this waste as much as possible. So next is gift giving. So gift giving drives overproduction and waste, and we receive 81 million unwanted gifts each year in the UK, and also 75% of Christmas cards end up in general waste. And by the time we reach spring, nearly half of gifted toys will be broken and end up either in landfill or being incinerated. So you can make sustainable choices instead. So first of all is kind of experience-based or handmade gifts. So there's loads of options for this. You can plan a day out to a national trust or a wildlife trust location. You can make a homemade meal. You can choose animal adoption or memberships, and these are kind of some perfect gifts for nature and wildlife lovers wanting to help the environment. You can also shop that second hand if you do want to buy other gifts. So this reduces the environmental impact of manufacturing and transporting new products. So for example, the production and disposal of new toys creates a lot of plastic waste, but by buying second hand toys, you're reducing the demand for that new plastic. You can also shop at charity shops, which helps to raise funds for vital charities and causes. And second-hand items are usually cheaper than new items, as you can save around 50 to 80% on the same item. Also reusing wrapping paper wherever possible, or making your own kind of wrapping paper out of newspaper, magazines, looking for cards and wrapping paper made from recycled or FSC certified paper, and avoiding plastic ribbon and tape as much as you can. Also avoiding glitter. So glitter is a microplastic, so anything that has glitter on it is not recyclable, and we have an estimated 12.7 million tonnes of plastic now entering our oceans every year, lots of which is in the form of microplastics, so it's important that we do avoid using glitter as much as we can. So next is travel and energy. So travel and energy are really high emitters during the holiday period from lots of flights and car travel. So some alternatives to this you can take are staycations or local travel, or carpooling with others and using public transport as much as you can. Also just being wary of your winter energy use both at home and in the office. So some tips for this, you can coordinate your work from home days with colleagues to reduce office heating if everyone's not going to be in on the same day. Lowering your thermostat slightly and instead wearing some more warm layers. You can share your Christmas with friends and family members, so it's much more energy efficient to cook one meal and heat one home rather than 2, 3 or 4. And another thing leading on from that is if you're having the oven switched on for long periods of time while you're cooking, then this does keep the house warmer than usual, which means you can then lower your central heating. Making sure to kind of close your curtains or your blinds when the dark day is kind of drawing to an end. This can help retain even more heat, so you don't need to heat the house as much. And also switching off lights at night, especially the outside ones, can help reduce power further. If you're buying Christmas lights, then you can buy LED versions, which are more efficient and can be used for years to come. And you can switch them off overnight, or also making sure to use timers so they do come off at the same time every night. And your procurement for Christmas decorations is also really important. So we have a workplace supply where we have some sustainably sourced products. So for example, these Christmas crackers, they're made from 100% recycled paper sourced within the UK, and they're produced by Wilso in Leicester. They can be fully branded in your corporate colours, complete with your logo and a clear sustainable message, so everyone knows exactly how to plant them and enjoy their wildflowers come spring. And also the inks used are vegetable based and fully biodegradable, creating a genuinely circular festive experience. Also your tree, so just making sure you're disposing of your Christmas trees sustainably. So each year an estimated 8 million real Christmas trees are purchased in the UK. So at home, most councils in London will either collect your tree as part of your usual bin collection, or they'll set off drop-off points so it can be composted and used in local parks. So you can check your council's website for information about this. And then if you have a Christmas tree in your office, Recorra have a Christmas tree recycling service for trees up to 8 feet tall. And it's really simple and hassle-free, and it means that your tree will be composted. And alternatively, we also have sustainable Christmas trees, which are made using 100% recycled waste plastic that would usually be considered non-recyclable. So just lastly, I'm going to ask you to make a green pledge for the new year. So this should be quantifiable and impactful. So some examples for pledges you can make are to reduce your meat consumption. So for example, taking part in meat-free Mondays, maybe to buy second-hand items from charity shops instead of buying new items or fast fashion, cutting unnecessary travel as much as you can. So carpooling or using walking, cycling, using public transport, or maybe to reduce the hours of heating on that you have in your flat or your house. So just kind of improving insulation or wearing more layers inside so you can have the heating on for less hours. So I am going to ask if you could just maybe a couple people share their green pledges in the chat, and I can maybe read them out. So for example, my pledge is going to be only buying second-hand items from now on. So apps like Vinted and Depop are really good, and also charity shops. So Bryony has said, I pledge to avoid purchases from fast fashion brands. So that's a really, really good one. Fast fashion has a lot of environmental consequences because you're having to rebuy so often because they're so low quality, as well as the carbon emissions. And as Kirsten was saying earlier, the supply chain is often really unethical, and there's a lot of humanitarian issues involved. Oh, and Bryony's also attempting veganuary, which is a really good one. So your diet is kind of the biggest contributor to carbon emissions. So by attempting veganuary, there's a lot of kind of recipes on the websites and things like that, and you can do it with some other people, and that will have a really, really huge impact on your carbon emissions. And Ty is also attempting veganuary, so that's another great one.
What are you going to try?
Veganuary.
You're going to do? Don't you do vegan your Lender, the whole calendar?
Yeah.
Really annually vegan. I think I'm going to try. I'm only going to buy decorations that I will actually want to keep for next year. Yeah. So decorations that I can store in my tiny flat,
or even lights that you can kind of use all year round.
Yeah.
It's like fairy lights.
Yeah.
Clara says, I definitely want to do a green pledge. I want to consume less, but to start, I pledge to reduce my meat consumption to only eating meat 2 days a week.
That's great.
That's a really good one. It can be quite hard to kind of straight away aim to do something which isn't really easy to do, but by making it a lot more realistic.
Awesome.
And Matt says, I pledge to replace 3 material gifts with experiences for my friends and family. So that's another great one. So thank you very much for watching. So as I mentioned earlier, this will be uploaded onto the Recorra YouTube channel. So if you do want to rewatch it at a later time or share it with any of your family or colleagues, that would be a great way to kind of help reduce people's carbon emissions during Christmas. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, then feel free to put them in the chat now and we can answer them. But if not, thank you so much for coming, and we hope you have a good day and a lovely Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you very much.